So I have a tough question for you folks. Would you rather have your parents in one of Cuomo's nursing homes or your daughter interning in his office? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ruthless.
Democrats are set to take control of the U.S. Senate, House, and the White House.
This will go down as one of the most progressive administrations in American history.
God willing, everything is on the table.
You now can pass things without a filibuster threat.
You'll regret this, and you may regret it a lot sooner than you think.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
Well, hello and welcome to the Ruthless Variety Program. Smug, that was a hell of an entry.
It's a tough one. I mean, hey, we told you the guy was a monster, but it turns like he's a monster of many habits. The guy has already been known in New York, especially for just like bullying and, turning the state into his little kingdom. Now that he's got a Dem supermajority in the legislature, but it's a lot worse than just killing folks. He's also mistreating women. And, I'm honestly, I'm not surprised. He's just an absolute pig and always has been.
Total monster. There are many reasons why people listen to the Ruthless Variety Program. Some like the singing, some like the dancing and the entertainment. There are others who like the story before the story.
Yep.
And if you notice, we've been talking about Cuomo for longer than anybody else.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I mean, you know what? We should just get right into this. I want to go like a half hour into Cuomo because there's so much to be said.
But I do need to also tease, because this is a very desired interview that we have. The menu
That's right.
All over us to get Congresswoman Elise Stefanik in the program. And she came on today, had a wonderful interview. This very topic is a passion project of hers. She was the first member of the New York congressional delegation to call on Cuomo to resign. She's been all over it. I think you'll enjoy everything she has to say on the topic.
Yeah, absolute fan favorite. And like you said, she's been the tip of the spear in fighting Cuomo, calling him out. And New York State's a better place now that she got reelected.
Can I also say she was a little offended you didn't show up for her interview?
I feel so terrible. I had to run outside of my home with short notice. And then I got that call from Ashbrook and I was like, man, I honestly shouldn't have even answered this call. I'm so sorry.
I mean, she's kind of a big deal. You just totally stiffed her like that.
I apologize, Congresswoman. I absolutely will make that one up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're an elusive figure. You do what you do. Anyway, let's get right into it, because Cuomo has had a very bad stretch here. It's getting worse all of the time. We were aware of the nursing home debacle because Janice Dean, our guest last week, started educating on that last spring. We were aware of the fixed numbers because it came out about a month ago that he had been manipulating statistics of deaths in nursing homes.
Lying to the feds,
of which I still think there's going to be some significant sort of criminal liability there at some point, but we'll see where that leads. And now we found out last week that an employee elaborated upon her sexual harassment claims in a New York Times. Initially, an essay that she wrote on Medium was picked up in the New York Times, let me just say this about the New York Times. They are reliably lefty. They parrot the left-wing narrative more than, maybe any other publication. They've been all over this Cuomo thing. Yeah. All over it. And they should be, because they were apologizing and absolutely championing him for a full calendar year while he was doing all of this stuff, and they should have known about it.
And that is something is if you look across the spectrum at all the left-leaning publications, the New York Times did start covering this. Other ones like the Bulwark haven't said a word. I haven't seen anything on Cuomo from them, right?
No, they don't get. I mean, it's pathetic. It's pathetic. But anyway, so this woman comes out last week and said a whole bunch of different extremely inappropriate things that he had done to her and make her feel uncomfortable over a series of years. And including asking her to play strip poker at one point, gave her an unsolicited kiss apparently on the lips, which is just like, I can't even imagine a sitting governor thinking that's appropriate with an employee. I mean, it's just like in the 1950s that would have been inappropriate.
Yeah.
You know,
It's unbelievable. The gall of him, and like I was starting to get into it, is, this is a guy who was basically handed the keys to the kingdom by his father. Was always told, you little princeling, you're going to be the king of New York someday. You deserve to be able to do whatever you want, and he's really governed in that fashion. The way that he has, with that Dem supermajority, the way he has just crushed any dissenting opinion and just ruled that state with an iron fist and threaten, it's well known now, but it's always been well known that he threatens journalists, employees, opponents, anyone who disagrees with them. He threatens and says, I will ruin your life if you don't do as I ask. So this continues that trend. He had folks covering for his, essentially just, he was giving seniors a death sentence, the way he had set up these senior centers for COVID. So this is what you can expect from someone who's so morally bankrupt.
So completely morally bankrupt and used to getting his own way. This really turns over the weekend when a second former aide came out and accused Cuomo of a very similar sexual harassment story. The woman here, and I'm going to quote from the New York Times, Charlotte Bennett, a 25-year-old former aide of the governor, accused him of sexually harassing her last year, telling the New York Times that Cuomo had asked her about her sex life and whether she had ever had sex with older men.
What a fucking creep.
I mean, are you kidding me? This is the governor. Here's her quote. I just feel horrible for this young woman. Quote, I understood that the governor wanted to sleep with me and I felt horribly uncomfortable and scared and was wondering how I was going to get out of it and assumed it was the end of my job. I mean, look, we've talked an awful lot as a society about the Me Too movement, and we saw liberal Democratic hack activists try to hijack that for the purposes of partisan warfare with like Justice Kavanaugh, for example. The great irony of what we're seeing here with Governor Cuomo is that the chickens are all coming home to roost.
Yeah, he was at the forefront of that. He was calling on all these investigations into Kavanaugh because wasn't it Michael Avenatti? This attorney, Michael Avenatti, who's now, if I understand correctly, in like a federal prison, right? Put forth these accusations, completely unfounded, against Kavanaugh, saying that, when he was in college, this guy was involved in a gang rape circle. And Cuomo ran with it. That's the thing, is he was useful to the Dems when they were like, we need somebody who's going to be like a foil and just attack Trump nonstop. He's gonna, the way that the media turned Cuomo into this like hero of the coronavirus when it first started, of like, wow, they're calling him like the heartthrob governor and all this insane stuff. And you had him with his brother on CNN yucking it up. Well, actually, he's the one who's killing people and he's the one who's abusing women.
The thing I find so interesting about all of this, and there's also some parallels with the crisis we have at the southern border now with what used to be kids in cages is now overflow facilities for migrant children, right? During Kavanaugh's confirmation hearing, Michael Avenatti's, who, as you said, Smug, is now in prison, he had a client, Julie Swetnick, who accused Judge Kavanaugh of serial gang rape. And she was put on national television without substantiation.
Yeah, NBC, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah. And they brought that up in a hearing, a nationally televised hearing on Capitol Hill. In front of his wife and daughters, I might add. Yeah. And now, suddenly, you don't have to believe all women.
Right.
It's not believe all women. It's, well, there's a lot of facts at play. Things are complex. We need an investigation. And all of that's fine. All of that's good. But that was never the standard in the Trump era.
And let me tell you, I still feel this intense rage.
Me too.
When I get that mental image of Justice Kavanaugh's wife crying with her children present on what's supposed to be a happy day of this guy who lived his entire life straight as an arrow to become a Supreme Court justice. Do you know how much work that is? I mean, he's devoted his entire life to this kind of a track. And to have them bring out Michael Avenatti and this carnival of morons and liars to create these accusations, and then to have a Democrat governor and Cuomo say that, oh my God, this is fact, and he's got to go right now. It's infuriating.
They gave him an Emmy. They gave him a fucking Emmy.
They gave him an Emmy.
They gave him well, he deserved one for the acting job that he did back then. And all
him and Weinstein deserves a lot of awards.
I mean, they are amongst the best political actors we've seen in our generation.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one facet that I get hung up on all of this, which is, sometimes there are people who are more than you think, or they live a different life that you don't know about. Even close friends, you sometimes find out people are into things that you don't completely know about. That's not the case with Andrew Cuomo.
Yep.
Right? This is not somebody who people around him immediately reacted to these two accusations and said, oh, he would never be capable of something like that. The governor himself didn't react that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he reacted as though this was, oh, well, yeah, I'm sorry, they took it the wrong way.
Yeah, he put out that statement, didn't he? Where he was like, oh, I'm sorry these people were offended by my jokes.
Yeah.
There was a little tell. As well, which I know some people on Twitter were particularly offended by, where Governor Cuomo mentions that he had previously counseled one of these accusers about their previous experience with sexual assault, which is a little wink that maybe they're not credible.
Maybe this person is just a serial accuser.
He's like, hey guys, she's crazy. Am I right, guys?
It's
this guy was the champion for the liberal movement, where they were like, this guy's a heartthrob. Wow, look at him. What a great job he's doing. He should run for president. There were articles that were put out saying that he's the most eligible bachelor in America. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable what the media does.
But I think I just find the whole thing completely amazing, in that how Me Too is sort of politicized and used as a Democratic weapon, and it ultimately is coming to fruition. The goals of the Me Too movement are coming to fruition by brave women like the ones that we just talked about brave women frankly, like people like Janice Dean and Elise Stefanik, who we have today, who are actually elevating these concerns. You recall. What's her name? The senator from New York, Gillibrand.
Yep.
She absolutely was adamant about Al Franken leaving the United States Senate because it suited her political purpose as a contender in a Democratic primary. Has she said anything about this Cuomo situation?
Nope.
I've heard nothing. Like literally nothing. The standard that was elevated for Kavanaugh versus the standard that they're applying here is ridiculous. And back to my original point, everyone knew that this is the way that Cuomo has operated.
Yep.
Which is why I found so hilarious the tape that came out of him several years ago at a New York State fair interacting with a journalist.
Yeah. We got to play that. I mean, this will tell you. Everyone knew.
Yeah, so let me give the context for this. So the context for this is he's at the New York State Fair, and Cuomo is sitting at a round table in this hall with his family and presumably some other folks, and journalists are gathered around the table doing their job. Right, they're covering the guy the governor as he's eating. He somehow locks eyes with this woman who's local reporter, a younger journalist, who's watching him eat a sausage, right? And immediately he starts engaging her about whether she'd like to eat the sausage, right?
Jesus.
And ultimately beckons the waiter over to say, bring this young lady. She's, by the way, she's standing with all of her colleagues. Like, she's a journalist who is standing with all of her colleagues in a professional setting, trying to report the story of what the governor is up to at this event. And he orders her this just massive sausage, which, like, I don't even know where to begin to explain how inappropriate that is at any point, but let alone as a governor of a state and a journalist that is covering what you're doing there. So he orders this thing up and they send it over. Let's play the audio on this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know if I should eat the whole sausage in front of you, but I'm definitely going to eat it.
You got to eat the whole sausage. Yuck, 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 yuck.
Like, that really is so insane. Like, like even Mad Men era, like if you did that on Don Draper, he'd be like, well, hold on, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so dramatically inappropriate. Now, the woman has said that she didn't feel like she was being sexually harassed at the time. So, I'll disclose that. That's fine. And look, she's a professional, entitled to her opinion of the way that went down. Imagine a scenario where a man in power in any professional setting orders a woman whose job it is to cover, or in this sense, document what this person is doing, orders a sausage and then demands she eat the whole thing in front of him. I mean,
imagine.
Bizarre. It's bizarre.
Bizarre behavior. It's not something. And then he's kind of like looking around and smiling a little bit. And, it's not like overt sexual harassment, I guess. Actually, I think it is actually, but it's not. Ultimately what it is a good signal to everybody what this guy's doing.
It's a fucking power move.
Yep. And I think it's such a tell that he was like looking around and knew no one would speak up, because that's the way he operates.
That's right.
He knew, number one, I think he knew how like way out of line that is. And I bet that's his thing too, is he likes knowing he has that power, that I can do whatever I want and I can look around the room and everyone better act like whatever I want is okay.
I mean, that's basically what they got going on.
Mm-hmm.
So look, as Republicans are thinking about the way back, right? And what does the political road look like to get Republicans back to power? It's an even mix between the right candidates, the right issues, the politics at bay, and taking advantage of the right opportunities. This is clearly a person who represents a systemic failing of New York politics.
Yep.
By Democrats over a period of time that has given people exactly the opposite of what they say they want. You have a misogynistic, power-hungry career politician sitting on top of the ambitions, the safety, the security of all the people in an extremely difficult situation, right? Time for a change. Like, Republicans in New York have not had a lot to talk about lately. It seems to me like this is a real opportunity.
Yeah, that is such a perfect statement. Let me tell you, it is exactly the perfect diagnosis of what's happened there. Every time I go back, every time I'm in New York, it's heartbreaking what has happened to that city and that state, because that party, one party rule has completely atrophied the place.
There's a lot of doom around the future prospects of the Republican Party, which is, of course, complete horseshit. Mm-hmm. And the media likes to play that up. For some of our younger listeners who may not remember this period of time, but in 2009, Republicans won the governor's mansion in Virginia and in New Jersey. Then we flipped a Senate seat in Massachusetts and Illinois.
Yeah.
So
all your stuff matters, man.
Shit happens. Really right. Right. And you say, oh, well, it's fucking New York. It's New York. It's, it's corrupt. Democrats own it. No, this is a fight we should have because he's a piece of shit.
It's a fight we should have. I ask Elise about this specifically because I think she's a uniquely credible voice in New York that people just absolutely revere. You'll be interested to hear what she has to say. But in the meantime, we're going to stay on it. Listen, folks, we stayed on the Lincoln Project. Boom.
Gone.
We stayed on various aspects of the Biden campaign and administration that have blown up. I mean, I feel like we've got a hot hand here. Neera Tanden is sort of teetering on the brink.
She's almost there. We almost got that done.
Is the one thing that we've really spent a lot of time on. Listen, when we're talking about it,
the power of Ruthless.
Keep your eye on it. But in the meantime, let's play some games.
Oh,
the people of the games.
I'm so excited. Let's hit the game show music. So we got a little different thing this episode with the COVID package. We decided that instead of playing King of the Hill today, and we are going to play King of the Hill. I think we'll probably do it on the Thursday episode. We're going to instead do kind of like a Wheel of Fortune sort of game here with the COVID package. And basically the setup is Holmes and Smug are going to get some spins at the wheel, and we're going to figure out, what sort of pork barrel programs the Democrats have put in here into this COVID package.
Yeah, honestly, it should be called a quote COVID package. It's basically just like Dem wish list package that they're trying to say must be passed now.
Well, it's a goodie bag. It's a goodie bag, and that's the point of this game. Is we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna spin the wheel, and we're gonna total it up after 2 rounds. Holmes and Smug get 2 rounds, and then we're going to determine who the winner is.
Okay. All right. Let's get this, because this is what it's like to be a progressive fat cat in Washington, D.C. under unified government.
That's right. That's right.
We have our first taste of that, Smug. Here it is.
Yeah, you're a member of the Appropriations Committee and Unified Democratic Government, and you got your hand out.
Gimme. Special interest, gimme.
All right, so who's going to spin first?
I'm going to spin first. I'm going to spin the wheel.
You're going to spin the wheel. Okay, let's get that spin.
Well, what do we got here?
Okay. Wow. We have 86 billion in a bailout for union pensions.
86 billion?
Ooh.
I'm going to write that down. 86 billion.
Yeah. These
now that's
pensions,
a spin.
These pensions
86
have been
billion.
in crisis for years.
So these are just to put a finer point on it. These are the pension programs that the unions unilaterally promised, right? That the union jobs that they create, they just promise people these pensions and these whatever, that now the taxpayers are actually having to pay out because the unions themselves can't.
So, I mean, this may be a dumb question, but what does this have to do with COVID?
Fucking nothing.
86 billion. I'll take it. That's a hot spin.
86B.
Let's go. 86
All right,
billion.
let me roll this sucker.
All right, Holmes, here's your spin.
Come on, baby.
Ooh. Holy shit. Reopening schools. Whoo. That's a big one, folks. 129 billion.
Oh,
that's not fair. They already got how much? They already got how much that they haven't spent? 65 billion or something, right?
Oh yeah, no. That's the best part is that there's like 60 some odd billion that was spent last year, and the schools still aren't open.
Yeah, but they didn't even spend the money. Like
Yeah,
they were already allocated
Right.
like 60 some billion, and they haven't spent at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, Smug. Were you under the impression this was about opening schools?
Oh my God.
They were appropriated last year $68 billion. And the greatest part is that only $5 billion has been spent so far.
And they're getting another, what was the number?
129.
Are you kidding me?
It's
a fucking extortion racket is what it is.
Imagine the teacher's lounge after all this.
Right?
Oh boy. I mean, those vending machines don't pay for themselves.
Listen, if these teachers refuse to teach, they should all have Lamborghinis, essentially. Like that's the dim plan.
We should run the math on that and figure out how much it is.
I bet like every teacher could get at least a Tesla. Like, holy shit.
I bet it's in the ballpark. I bet it's in the ballpark.
Wow. They haven't even spent the 60 bill.
Those were some good spins. So for our listeners at home, that's 86 billion, a bailout for union pensions for Smug. And Holmes kind of hit the jackpot here with reopening schools at 129 billion.
That is insane money.
So those are our first round totals.
Let's spin again. I'll take the first spin in the second round.
Oh, you're gonna spin first. Yeah. Okay.
Snake.
Let's that spin. Okay. You have landed on 17 billion for veteran affairs. And the thing that's very interesting about this, Holmes,
a worthy cause as it seems.
Well, of course it's a worthy cause. The problem is that the VA has 10 billion sitting unused from the 20 billion that was provided through the CARES Act a year ago.
This is I don't know, man. I maybe I just don't understand how government works. Why aren't they just spending the money they have? They already took it from people.
Oh, Smug. You wouldn't be able to leverage the support of these poor interest groups if you couldn't promise a little something else.
Man, the thing that's the extra like kick in the nuts here is we're just around the corner from April 15th, and it's just like I know how much I had to pay last year. I know I'm gonna have to pay this much this year, and it's just like
they don't give a shit.
They don't care.
They don't give a shit about working people. If you want to be honest about it, that's my problem with like the Washington passing out checks idea is that somehow they think that they deserve to get all the tax dollars out of every single American, and then they decide how to repurpose it back to people. It's like, oh, your benevolence. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for gifting us back these dollars. And it's just outrageous.
And they don't even they take it and they don't even spend it on what it's unbelievable. It's an outrage. I'm ready to spin. Let's get a hideously large number.
Another Smug spin. Okay, let's hit it. Okay. Well, this is a good one. $53 billion to expand Obamacare.
Oh, fantastic. No. I think he's leaped past me.
Did I?
Hold on.
I
had 129, the first one.
You did?
I got 86 plus 53.
So I'm at 136 here.
No, you got the 17 billion from the VA.
Oh, it's 17. Yep.
Yeah, so that puts you at 146.
Oh man, I'm at 139.
Okay, so I got the lead.
By 7 billion?
Yep. So what's the
There's got to be like a door number 2, man.
Hold on. I want to know what was the specific that you got? What was the
I have 86 billion for union pensions, 53 billion for Obamacare. Bringing
the
Obamacare
expansion, which is basically they're going to subsidize more of the
it's Medicaid.
Yeah, the ACA premiums and every subsidized COBRA and all of that sort of stuff. Remember, Obamacare was going to save us all this money, guys.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Just like the student loan stuff, right? Doesn't actually change the price of your college tuition. It just
weird
else on the hook.
Weird how that works.
Yeah, I got it.
So
okay, so I'm leading.
You are leading, but it's a little bit of a lightning round.
Let's go.
So, how do you guys want to handle it?
I want door number 2. I demand there be a door number 2.
He loves the doors. You know how he likes the doors.
I mean, there's no game theory in that.
He likes the doors.
Makes sense to me. I'll trade my $53 billion for another option.
Oh,
I'll spin. How about that? I'll spin again. Or no, it should be like the higher. I have to give up the 86 to spin again.
I think this is nonsense.
Wow.
I think what you need to do is make a choice between another spin or door number 2.
That makes sense. I'll take door number 2.
Of course, he loves the doors. I told you, he loves the doors. So I know
no.
I held a couple in a band.
Oh no, Smug.
What's door number 2?
You went bankrupt. You went bankrupt, pal.
What was door number 2?
Door number 2 is it gives Planned Parenthood and labor unions access to PPP. There's no price tag on it, so it's the bankrupt.
There's something so perfect for loans for abortion.
Amazing. The morally bankrupt. Option.
Morally bankrupt. And now literally bankrupt.
Oh my God.
0.
So Holmes is the victor.
Oh, this is great. I got I have a 2-game hot streak, a heater, as they say.
Wow.
You have a heater. You know what I love about this game is we had to do fucking math. I mean, I've drank an entire bottle of wine this evening, and that was difficult enough.
I'm confident in the math. I'll take the victory.
Well, Moderator Jeff, play us out with the music.
All right, so we're going to get right into the interview. Elise Stefanik covering all the important issues, a big fan favorite. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, welcome to Ruthless.
Great to be with you, Josh.
I mean, this is terrific. As you know, you have an awful lot of huge fans within the Minion world who have been
I love the Minions.
They have been demanding that you come on Ruthless.
Well, I'm happy to be here. The Minions stepped up in big ways when I was under attack by the entire Democratic ecosystem during the first round of impeachment. So I love the Minions and I love the listeners of this podcast.
So, well, that's terrific. I just do a quick backdrop. When you were first elected, I think it is the case that you were the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. Is that right?
I was. And what's interesting about that, Josh, is I did not know that when I was initially running for office. I only found out about that after I won my primary. And then there was a fair amount of media. And what was really interesting and really inspiring is parents started bringing their young daughters to events that we would have in the district. And a lot of these were non-political families, but they would bring their daughters so they could see and show an example of a woman cracking glass ceilings, whether it's in politics or anything, in business, in industry, you name it. So it's been really humbling and exciting. But that record has been broken, which is a good thing.
Yeah, well, look, that's awesome, and I didn't know before I started researching a little bit that this was your thing. But I knew that you have a huge following amongst young women who idolize your work and think a lot of you, and that has translated to an awful lot of things that you're doing in the House, including recruiting really qualified women to run and win as Republicans in Congress. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So 2020 was the year of the Republican woman, and it was very, very exciting. We not only shattered expectations and didn't lose a single seat in the House and won every single toss-up, but most of the seats we flipped were flipped by Republican women candidates. And I was proud to be a part of that. So going back to when I first ran in 2014, I flipped a district. It was held by a Democrat, flipped it to Republican, and we've won it by double digits ever since. But I was not recruited. In fact, they wanted another candidate to run, and I had the fire in the belly, worked really hard, outworked my opponent, walked away winning the primary and the general election. And that experience helped me understand that we needed to do better as a Republican Party, really having an ecosystem to recruit and financially support our strongest candidates who are Republican women. And the 2018 midterms, which we all remember was a really tough and bad year for Republicans, we got wiped out. And a lot of our amazing House members who are women lost seats. So we were down to only 13 women in the House. And this was when there was only 100 total women serving. So 13 Republican women, I should specify. And that is not reflective of who we are as a party. That's not reflective of who our voters are. So I made it my mission to use my leadership PAC to really focus on recruiting, supporting, and investing in women candidates early. And we didn't support every woman candidate, Josh. We really were strategic in having a metrics-based program for candidates to qualify. And Kevin McCarthy supported it, Steve Scalise, and the NRCC, to their credit, did as well. And we now have 31 women. So from 13 to 31 in one cycle, that's a huge win. And, you know, success begets success. We've already heard from dozens of women Republican candidates who are looking at some of these must-win seats for us to win the majority. So it's been really exciting. And these women are extraordinary. They have unbelievable personal stories of overcoming adversity, of building businesses, of serving in the military, and they don't get the credit from the mainstream media. You don't see them on the glossy women's fashion magazines, even though they are deserving. But it's unfortunate that the media loves to only hold up the Democratic women. Part of the mission is part of the mission of the PAC is trying to elevate Republican women's stories to make sure that people across this country know that the Democratic Party does not have a monopoly on women candidates or women voters. So really exciting, more to come.
Yeah, that's great. Well, one of the things that I want to dive into a little bit on this, because I think, you know, listening to what you said on its face, it sounds like a bunch of, you know, really valuable goals and things that, you know, of course, everybody should want to dive into. But there's a reason why they haven't, because it's hard. It's difficult. You were willing to break China and make this a real priority. And one of the things that I really admire about your leadership last cycle and the cycle before is you were willing to just not ask for permission to go do and put a program in place and compete in primaries. Because, you know, I mean, look, Republicans in Washington, you never want to get into a primary because it's always, you know, dividing against yourselves, and it's just sort of uncomfortable business. And your point essentially was, we're going to support these candidates throughout, whether it's in the primaries and the generals. And ultimately what that meant is electing 18 women to Congress.
Yes, 18 new women, and then we supported all of our returning women incumbents. So we thought that was important as well, to protect those women members, because Democrats and the DCCC are very vicious when it comes to attacking the Republican women, and many of us face tough races, including myself this past cycle. Yeah. So I didn't ask for permission, but I was really, really honored that, again, Kevin McCarthy got on board right away. So did Steve Scalise, and the NRCC saw the success of our program and really made those critical investments when they were most necessary in the general election. And what I always made clear to my colleagues who, you know, maybe got their feathers ruffled a little bit when I announced this organization was, look, we are not endorsing women just because they're women. We are going to specifically work to identify the strongest candidates who happen to be Republican women. And I think that model that was based on metrics, forcing candidates to fundraise themselves initially, build an email list, have a strong strategy. How many votes do they need to get? Just the basics of putting together a campaign, which you and I know, Josh, a lot of first-time candidates really struggle with.
Yeah,
we tried to put them through their paces to make sure that they had a path to victory in the primary in general. And the model worked, and we're excited now that all these new women can help pay it forward for this next round of candidates. candidates.
That's just awesome. Well, thank you for doing it. First of all, it's been something that we have needed some leadership internally on for decades, and you've really taken it on your shoulders. I want to get to some New York politics, because I know that this has been a very interesting place to reside here over the last few months, and basically since COVID began. You've been very outspoken and a critic of Governor Cuomo over the last several months. I think it is the case that you were the first member of the New York delegation to call on Governor Cuomo to resign. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And for any myriad of reasons, every day you're being proven more right than the day before. Where do you think things stand right now with Governor Cuomo?
He has to absolutely resign. There are members of both parties calling for his resignation. I do think it's stunning that Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer have turned a blind eye, frankly, to his what we now know as pervasive sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and sexual grooming. Reading the New York Times article by the second victim, I mean, it makes your skin crawl. We're talking about the most powerful man in New York State, and arguably one of the most powerful men at the national level in the Democratic Party, asking wildly inappropriate questions to a young woman in her 20s. In a regular place of work, that individual would be fired without any, with cause. But it goes deeper than this, Josh. It is a culture of corruption at the highest levels of New York State government. And the more you look, the more that is evident. And it all really, it goes back actually a long time, but within the past year, since COVID started, the nursing home scandal crisis was ongoing while the governor was being hailed by the mainstream media, while he won his Emmy. Meanwhile, 15,000 New Yorkers lost loved ones because he didn't follow federal guidance and put out an executive edict forcing positive COVID patients into nursing homes, knowing that nursing homes are our most vulnerable seniors. And they covered it up. I was the first elected official to say that this was a criminal cover-up. And again, the left ridiculed me. Even members of the press sort of didn't take it as seriously. And now we know, because there was an admission on tape of the senior-most aide to the governor, the secretary to the governor, that they knowingly withheld that information from the American people, from New Yorkers, and from the Department of Justice, which is an obstruction of justice, a federal crime. That was really the first, within this past year, the first real, the tip of the iceberg that led to, the governor lashing out, which is his typical characteristic when he threatened to destroy a Democratic member of the Assembly, Ron Kim. That's par for the course in New York politics. Everyone has gotten a call like that from Governor Cuomo.
Is that right? Because we had Janice Dean on last week, and she talked specifically about her experiences, and this guy is just an absolute bully. I suspect, as outspoken as you have been, you've been on the business end of a few of those too.
Oh, his team, they have been vicious and vindictive. For last year, when I stood up against the governor wanted to take ventilators from the National Guard, use the National Guard to forcibly take ventilators from upstate New York to downstate, rather than voluntarily allowing hospitals to figure out what they need and then shift resources. I led the effort standing up against that. The attacks and the viciousness that his staff and his team targeted me, I mean, it was the worst I have seen or experienced in New York politics. And
for doing nothing more than representing your district.
For representing my district, and Democrats and Republicans agreed. The Democrats upstate agreed with me. It wasn't partisan. It was just, don't take from, the vulnerable. I have the most aged district too. The most number of seniors reside in my district in New York State. So you can't take the resources away forcibly with the National Guard. That was, again, a year ago about at this point, or a little less than a year ago. And it's just been a real train wreck since then for the governor. But the viciousness is well known, which is why you're seeing more and more elected officials from both parties and his staff come out to really talk about this culture of abuse, this incessant bullying, belittling. And now we know, I mean, his statement last night, he essentially admitted to sexual harassment and sexual abuse. And it was interesting. He didn't use the term for the individual of the one victim. He said people. So this means there are more people that are going to come forward.
Yeah, that's so. The statements that I read, it was. I felt like I missed something. I mean, there was no way that these are the words that he chose to characterize his interactions with these two young women, and yet he did, and in fact talk about, sort of how one of them had been a victim of sexual assault. It just boggled my mind, and I keep thinking, surely God, somebody has to do something about this. And I know that people like Ron Kim have stood up and within his own party and criticized, and there are staff members, God bless them, who have been brave enough to speak truth to power here. There are an awful lot of people wondering, can we beat this guy? And they're looking to you in a lot of ways. Is this something you're considering? Would you ever consider running against Governor Cuomo?
I think there's a lot of dynamics going on in New York state politics right now. I think this culture of corruption that really predates this. I mean, this governor has, covered up and gotten rid of his own commission to investigate corruption. One of his previous senior aides is serving prison time for corruption. Unfortunately, this has been the culture in Albany really my whole life. I mean, this goes back to when I was a kid. I do think the dynamics are changing. I think he should resign. It's less about politics, Josh. It's more about the right things need to happen, and Democrats need to grow a political spine and speak truth to power on the issue of his corrupt leadership and his, frankly, abusive leadership. I'm focused on running for re-election for the House. I'm focused on raising money for women candidates. A lot of people call us every day, encouraging us to consider it. And, I am involved with down ballot races at the local level across New York State because I think that's important. I think we'll have to wait to see how the dynamics play out. But I'm focused on running for the House.
Well, you'd be a heck of a candidate. And I imagine New York Republicans would lay in traffic to get you to consider that race. So, but what I didn't hear there is an absolute no.
A lot can change. I mean, I think again, this governor should resign. If he does not resign, there is a path for a Republican to win statewide in New York, and I'm calling for him to resign. So I want to see that happen. And I, again, am planning on running for the House, but these dynamics, as you know, change very quickly. I mean, a year ago or only a couple of months ago, Governor Cuomo was hailed inaccurately by national Democrats as really the icon. Even President Biden talked about, quote unquote, Cuomo's strong leadership, really the best of the best. And now we know the White House is showing distance significantly between Cuomo and obviously the Biden administration.
It's amazing. It really is. One other thing in New York politics I want to get you to weigh in on. A ton of people nationally are talking about whether or not AOC is going to be primarying Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. What's your sense from a New York perspective? I mean, Democrats seem like they've got all the problems in the world in New York, but that might be another one.
That would be another one. I mean, I know Senator Schumer is working very hard to reach out to the progressive socialist faction in New York, and he, he's spending a lot of time trying to build those relationships. I think AOC, she has to wait to see how the districts are drawn. I know as does everyone in New York State, because we're going through redistricting. I do think that she will continue to be a thorn in the Democratic establishment side, whether it's the Senate race or even whether it's the governor's race or future statewide races. She would be a big challenge to Schumer. And it's interesting to look at the sexual harassment issue of Cuomo through that lens, because AOC was much further ahead than Chuck really calling out Cuomo. Schumer was very, very slow and frankly did the bare minimum of, supporting finally the New York Attorney General getting the subpoena power to start an investigation. But he did it after the fact. She was much earlier than that. So that's another one where we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, Schumer seems like he's walking a tightrope every day. And so far, his answer has been to go as far left as you can possibly go, hoping to deter the AOCs of the world. But I have to think that Republicans in New York are watching that and wondering if they can also field a candidate for that race.
Yes. And, it's easy to focus on the scandals of the moment. But as I was going into 2021, thinking about some of the key issues New York is facing that have been building for quite some time. And I think we're facing 5 crises, and Schumer has been in office over these 5 crises, and so has Governor Cuomo. The crisis of the population loss. No state has lost more population than New York. It's why we are losing congressional districts, and it's because of the high taxes and progressive policies. We're facing a crisis in security and safety with the highest number of retirement rates from the NYPD, the defund the police proposals from Democrat socialists in New York City, as well as in state government right now in Albany. We're facing a constitutional crisis in the fact that the governor has all this executive power, this emergency power, and is no longer, frankly, responsible to the people because he doesn't have to go through the legislature anymore. So these 2 scandals obviously are bombshell scandals in New York, but there's a lot of other long-term crises that people are very frustrated with the status quo in New York.
No question. And nationally, and the last bit of national news I'll get to before our 3 questions at the end is this COVID relief package, which, I've been saying at the outset, generally speaking, in the first 100 days of a new administration, that's like your one opportunity to do something on a bipartisan basis. And by choosing COVID, they're choosing a topic that President Trump and Republicans were able to pass twice with 90 plus votes in the Senate. And yet here we are with an entirely partisan vote out of the House late on Saturday night. I'm sure you love that. What do you make of the way Democrats have handled this?
I think they've completely mishandled it. I think they've also misread the desires and the need from the American people. The American people want to see targeted COVID relief, but that doesn't mean slush fund pork projects for Nancy Pelosi. There was absolutely no outreach to Republicans in the House. And yes, President Biden had that one meeting with Republican senators. Meanwhile, his chief of staff was rolling his eyes in the back of the room that many Republican senators, they did not miss that and notice that. So there was no bipartisan outreach. It's a horrible partisan move to have this be your first signature legislative package, especially after the inaugural speech that talks about unifying. As the American people learn more and more about this $1.9 trillion COVID bill, they will see that 90% of the funds have nothing to do with public health. Most of the funds aren't even spent until after this year. So they're appropriating programs in the future that have nothing to do with COVID. And it is a stark contrast. Republicans, we didn't just pass 2, we passed 5 COVID bipartisan bills, almost unanimous last year, that are the reason we have vaccines today, the reason we had the largest economic rescue package for small businesses to keep jobs. So this was a partisan overreach from President Biden. And I think similar to I kind of liken this to 2009, after the economic crisis at the tail end of the Bush administration. President Obama pushed through very partisan proposals, and that led to the 2010 Tea Party wave as people learned more and more about the wasteful spending. And these are taxpayer dollars. People understand that it's their money and their grandkids' money that these Democrats are just spending that have nothing to do with, in this case, COVID relief. So I think as people learn more about this bill, there's going to be a backlash. And it's why Republicans, I think, are in a great position to win the majority and pick up those key seats in the Senate.
Yeah, here. I'm all for that. Listen, you've been doing more than your part to have the party in particular, women within the Republican Party, well represented and in position to win. So we thank you for that. I got 3 really important questions for you, Elise.
These are the fun ones.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road and the listeners can understand exactly who you are. So here we go. Your last meal on Earth, what would it be?
I bet a lot of people say similar to what I'm going to say. I just think back to my mom's cooking. It's going to be a 3-course meal, Josh. So first, my favorite snack is salsa and chips. I specifically always say salsa and chips, not chips and salsa, because salsa is the most important part of that meal.
See where the
That's the
emphasis
warm up.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do crab legs that my dad makes. We usually have those before on Christmas Eve. And then my mom's homemade raviolis. My mom is Italian American and just makes amazing homemade sauce. So
you really, that's a large, you run the gamut there. That's terrific.
It does. It goes from salsa and chips snack to seafood. I'm an eclectic eater and I like all types of food.
I mean, Mexican to Italian with a little seafood in the middle.
Exactly. But that would be my last meal.
Well done. Okay, we haven't had that. That's as good as it gets. Memorable too. Your second question. If you weren't involved in politics, what would you be doing with your life?
That's a good question. You know, when I was a child, when people would ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would say without hesitation, I'm going to be a Disney animation artist. Now, if you ask me today, that's not what I would say, but that was my sort of childhood. That's the path that I thought I was going. I loved Disney.
Are you an artist? Can you draw and do you have an artistic sense?
I would say I'm fairly artistic, but it's, talk about not having time to do that. I was, though, growing up. I was into theater. I was into art and just the arts in general as a kid all the way through high school. But I think if you asked me today what I would be doing, I probably would be either a book editor or a book reviewer because I'm a huge reader and I do make time to do that right now. And similar to my eclectic taste in food, I also have eclectic taste in books and love, biography, historical fiction, memoir, nonfiction, but I'm a big reader and I make it a mission to spend some time every day, usually at the end of the day, reading. And it's a good escape from the day-to-day news cycle.
Lord knows you need that. What are you reading right now?
I actually wrote down a couple of my recent reads so that I could share them with the listeners.
Oh, good.
A couple of the best books that I read this year one is called The Company I Keep by Leonard Lauder, who is one of the 2 sons of Estee Lauder, and it talks about sort of building the Estee Lauder companies from a small family business to a public company. And he gives great advice, both from a business perspective, from a management perspective, but just general leadership. And another great book, I just finished this one, is called Save Me the Plums. And this was a memoir from the last editor-in-chief of Gourmet magazine and talks about, her love of food, but also the changes in the print media and magazine world over the past, challenging 10 years. So you can see the eclectic nature of what I like to read.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that's great stuff. All right. Elise, we're going to get to the last question here, which is really the most important in the Ruthless Variety program. And it is, what motivates you more, the thrill of victory or the agony of defeat?
I run to win. Everyone on my team knows that. My grassroots supporters know that. I do not run to lose, and we run to win big. We don't run single-digit races, and I am a competitive person by nature. I don't know if I'm answering that question the best way, but I I value actually being underestimated. I think I've been underestimated a lot in my career, going back to my first race, to going through impeachment, where we totally surged when people were ready to leave us on the side of the road for politically dead. And we excelled getting through that. And the success of EPAC. So I guess it's the thrill of winning and then keeping my promises to my constituents and doing a good job and getting rehired, because they have the choice to do that every 2 years.
That's a very comprehensive and terrific insight, because, this is the most revealing question we have. And it seems to me like you've given it as much thought as anybody out there. Maybe not as much thought as you've given to your last meal, but certainly some thought.
Well, these 3 questions are fun. I always like these sort of non-traditional, non-day-to-day politics questions, because you can learn a lot about people.
You can. That's why we do it. Well, listen, Elise, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program. As you know, a lot of people that listen are huge fans of yours. I hope that if you decide that you want to run for governor, if you want to run for Senate, or even if you just run for re-election, that you can come on again and talk to us about that.
Love it. Will do. And thank you to all the listeners of Ruthless. Thank you to all the minions. And thank you to Smug, who stood us up.
He stood you up. And the thing is, we're going to make that a big portion of the program. I mean, I frankly think he's offended you, and I'm sorry about that.
He is. No offense, Josh. I was really looking forward to meeting Smug on this call.
I know it. He's an elusive character. You can't see him anyway, so I'll save you the time, and we'll address it directly with him.
Good.
Congresswoman Stefanik, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
So there she is. I think, look, far be it from me to take the news angle of this, because I think she offered a lot of really good content and provided people with a deep understanding of what it is that she's been up to in the political context and helping House Republicans get really, really good people elected. But she didn't rule out running against Cuomo.
She should run. That was a great interview. She should run. I'm with it. Right? Excellent interview. A fan favorite. We had the minions asking, get Elise on the show. She came through with it. She delivers for the people.
You demand it, we deliver it.
She's been really banging the drum on the Cuomo stuff, which I appreciate.
Thank God.
I appreciate, because there's 2 sides to this. There's the Janice Deans of the world who, God love her. She had her in-laws both die in those nursing homes, and Cuomo's writing a fucking book, and so she has the ability to a platform to get out there and talk about it. And then you got people like Elise who, have the SWAT, being a member of Congress. And so I think those 2 sides of it is what's important,
Huge.
Totally agree. Great stuff, folks. Smug.
Another strong episode. Great job, everybody. Good game show, Duncan. Great interview on that one, Holmes. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.